Good morning, everyone. First, we just want to apologize for that mishap. These Team Live links get a little tricky, and so we just sent the incorrect link. So thank you, everyone, for your patience, and I apologize if it caused any stress. If any colleagues are having issues joining, just please resend that link to them. It should work now. Yeah, so I'm just going to give everyone a couple more minutes to join since we just had that mishap. So just know we'll get started here in a couple minutes. I'm Vanessa Bryant. I am the Customer and Brand Marketing Manager at Success. I have been a part of developing our Microsoft Teams consulting practice in the organization. I've worked with Alex Fields, who is also on this call. He is our go-to MVP for all things Microsoft. So yeah, we will be presenting today and we'll be answering any questions you have. So if you would like to ask a question during the event, you can use the live event Q&A panel that's on the right. To access this, it might look like a little question mark with some chat bubbles. You can publish any questions you have throughout the presentation into this Q&A panel, and we'll either address them on the spot, or if we don't get to them, just know that we have time at the end of the presentation. All right, so today we're going to talk about file sharing and document management in Microsoft 365. Today's agenda, we are going to review OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint and how to interact with files in each of these applications. So we're really going to get comprehensive today with all things files and all of these applications. We're going to talk about when to use each application and how to identify your role in managing or contributing to a document. We're also going to review the lifecycle of a document at the end of the presentation, and we'll hop into some live demos. So let's get started. So this diagram here is what we call the spheres of collaboration. If you've attended our user groups in the past, you've definitely seen this framework before. However, it's important, so we like to share it every time. Moving from sphere to sphere, we have OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint, and the Office 365 applications that commonly go hand in hand with each of these. At the OneDrive level, your audience is private, and as you scale up, your audience gets larger and larger. These spheres also translate into workstage. So documents in your OneDrive are often in rough draft form and messy. As you scale up, your work becomes more polished because your audience is larger. The level of governance also changes from sphere to sphere. At the OneDrive level, you have control of who you share your documents with and how you share them. As you scale up, those sharing permissions are governed by your organization. Often, these governance decisions reflect the security requirements of your organization. So for example, if your organization handles a lot of sensitive data, external sharing may be disabled for certain people or teams in your organization. You can also think of working through these applications in terms of behind the curtain and on stage. OneDrive and Teams are going to be your preparation and collaboration spaces. And SharePoint and your extranet are going to be your on-stage spaces, those publication spaces. You can also think of OneDrive and Teams as your create spaces and SharePoint as the place where you consume information. So again, this is another way to look at it. In OneDrive, you have My Stuff. This is your private working space that remains private until you share your documents. In Microsoft Teams, this is your team stuff. Smaller groups of people with access to a shared document library, usually all with edit permissions. This is collaborative in nature. And then lastly, we have SharePoint. This is everyone's stuff. Larger groups of people are accessing these shared libraries, and most have read-only permissions. This is a publishing and consuming space. So let's just dive right in and start with OneDrive. So many times, document drafts start in OneDrive. They're for your eyes only, and they're a little bit messy. Eventually, though, we may want input early on in the drafting process. and that's where we can use OneDrive to collaborate on documents. So it's best to use OneDrive when you need privacy while drafting documents, to share an early draft with one or select people. And you can think of it much like you would use the traditional My Documents location in your File Explorer. However, it's just so much better than that. So when we talk about OneDrive, it actually has two definitions. The first being the File Explorer location. This is the folder where your personal work content lives. The second definition is the application. This is the window into all of your work content, accessible from any device, anywhere. So first, let's make sure you can navigate to OneDrive if you're not already using it. So you can go to portal.office.com and select OneDrive from your app launcher. To add files to OneDrive, you have a few options. You can upload files and folders here, or drag and drop them from your File Explorer. You can also save files directly into OneDrive from the application. You can click Sync to make your files available in your Windows File Explorer. This takes all the cloud documents you have accessible here in the browser and syncs them to that File Explorer, which is a really great way to start using OneDrive because it's just like you would use your My Documents location. Once you click Sync, the OneDrive icon will appear in your File Explorer with a naming convention of OneDrive and then dash your company name. So let's talk about sharing OneDrive files. When you share a file, you're building a link to send to somebody that gives them permission and access to open the file. In OneDrive, select the file you would like to share by clicking the Share button. Share can also be found at the top of the browser. This will prompt you with a Send Link box. By default, an Anyone link option will appear. You can edit your link settings by clicking the arrow to the right. This displays your 4 different link options. Let's talk about these options. Anyone links are secret transferable links. Forwarding acts just like an attachment. However, this link will bring you to the most current version of the document in the cloud. So this is just something that wasn't possible with a file attachment. If you made any changes to a document after attaching it to an email, the recipient of that email would not see those changes. You can eliminate this issue by just sharing links to a OneDrive file. Next link option is the People in your organization option. These links only work for individuals inside the organization. So you can think of it like a magic attachment that cannot be forwarded externally. Specific people links are just that. They work only for a specific person or people and require internal or external users to sign in with a one-time passcode. And then lastly, there is a people with existing access link option. This is a link that will only work if you've already previously given permission to someone to this file. You can also set read-only permissions by deselecting Allow Editing. You can define an expiration date, and you can set a password or even block the download. So once you've selected your link option, you can enter your recipient and click Send. This will send an email to the recipient, granting them access to your file. You can also use the Copy Link option and paste this in an email or a Teams chat message to your recipient. So here, I've pasted the link in an Outlook message, and it automatically resolves the name of the file. Just a note, I've only seen this work in Outlook Online already, but I know it's coming soon to the Outlook client. The reason being is usually those links are kind of long and a bunch of random characters, so it's nice when it resolves to the name of the file. And you can even edit permissions for the link on the fly without returning to OneDrive. So let's recap OneDrive. Use OneDrive for private documents. Think of it as similar to My Documents. You can share documents with one person or select people using a link. Document ownership belongs to the creator of that document, and you get to decide who you share your documents with and how with link settings. So before I move on to Microsoft Teams, I just want to pause here and see if there's any questions.
We did have a couple come in, and I've been responding to them in the Q&A area. We had someone ask about if it's possible to get documents for like an employee's OneDrive if they're a manager? And the answer is yes. An IT administrator can also, generate sharing links or, grant access to any other person's OneDrive as needed. Also useful in like the situation of departures and things like that, or someone's on leave. So yes.
Thanks, Alex. All right, so let's move on to Microsoft Teams. So for those of you who don't already know, I can assume a lot of you have been using Teams, especially with this work from home world we're living in. In short, Teams is just a hub for communication and collaboration in your business. So this application brings together chat, meetings, calls, files, notes, and tools into one space supported by the entire Office 365 suite. So there are really two areas in Microsoft Teams in which we interact with files. The first area is Microsoft Teams Chat. And chat is best used for one-to-one or one-to-few conversations in which you do not need a shared file library. We also interact with files in Microsoft Teams channels. Teams channels are best used to share a document with a team of people working towards a common goal or project. So there are several ways to bring files into Microsoft Teams Chat. You can upload a OneDrive file, or you can upload a file from your computer. So let's talk about these differences because they're important. Sharing a file using the OneDrive option will essentially create and send a link to the location to where the file lives in the sender's OneDrive. So to share a OneDrive file, select the paperclip, then select OneDrive. Select the file you would like to share and click Share. This essentially creates a specific people link for your chat recipients, granting access to the specific people in your chat. And then, of course, all of these files are going to be accessible in the Files tab of the chat. So when this chat starts to get populated with messages and other files and everything kind of starts moving down, you can always quickly access all the files that have been shared in this chat just by using the Files tab. All right, so let's talk about uploading a file from your computer in chat. This option uploads a copy of that file, meaning this does not create a direct link to the location where the original file lives. Rather, it creates a copy and stores it in a folder in the sender's OneDrive called Microsoft Teams Chat Files. A link to the file in this new folder is then shared with people in the chat. There is a catch that I want to talk about. Using the option to upload a file from your computer to share a synced OneDrive file actually creates a copy of that file. So if you want to grant access to a OneDrive file without duplicating it, use that OneDrive option we just discussed previously to share your document, or you can always send a link. And of course, all of these documents will be accessible in that Files tab. All right, so as you can see, there are many ways to bring files into Microsoft Teams channels, and we'll go over these in just a second. But first, let's discuss when to share files in a Microsoft Teams channel. This is best to do when you want to share and/or collaborate on a document with a team of people working towards a common goal or project. This also ensures a team of people have access to a document in a shared library, meaning they do not need to have a link to access that file. They have access to the shared document library because they're a member of that team. So like we mentioned, there are many ways to bring files into Microsoft Teams channels. In the Post tab, you have option to attach a file, much like in Microsoft Teams Chat. However, your options are a little bit different here because your audience is larger. So let's go over each of these options very briefly and talk about the differences. So first, just like in chat, you have the option to upload a OneDrive file. To upload a file from OneDrive, click the paperclip and select OneDrive. This option allows you to upload a copy of a file stored in your OneDrive. Once shared, a copy of the file is stored in the Teams file library and accessible in the Files tab of this channel. So changes to this document will be stored in the version in the Teams shared library, not the original OneDrive location from which you shared. So when choosing this option, we recommend removing that original copy in your OneDrive to eliminate version sprawl. All right, your next option to bring or to reference files in a Teams channel are to browse teams and channels. So this option prompts you to select a file that's already been uploaded to a Teams channel. This shares a link to the file that is stored in the Teams shared library. This is a great option for bringing awareness to a file that has already been uploaded because team members actually don't get prompted when a new file has been added. All right, upload from my computer. So just like in chat, selecting this option uploads a copy of the file to the Teams shared library. This option will prompt you to select a file from a location on your computer, then uploads a copy of that file. So when choosing this option, again, we recommend removing that original copy to eliminate version sprawl, unless of course there's a reason you want to maintain that original version. Again, this file can be accessed in the Files tab of the channel. Create a new file tab in the Files tab. So to do this, you also have the option to create a new document right in the Files tab of a Teams channel. So to do this, select New and then the type of file you want to create. You'll be prompted to name the file and then you can click Create. Once your file is created, you can get right to work without even leaving the Teams application. Or you can open the document in the desktop app and continue working there. Regardless, all those changes you make and additions will be saved to that location in the Files tab in the Teams channel. Uploading a file to the Files tab. So to do this, you'll select Upload and Files. This will prompt you to select a file from a location on your computer. Select a file and select Open. This will upload a copy of the file to your Teams shared document library. When choosing this option, again, we recommend removing the original copy to eliminate version sprawl. Now here's our last one that I'll review for adding a file to a Teams channel. You have the option to move a file from a channel from your OneDrive. So this option actually physically moves a file from your OneDrive to a Teams channel and is the best option to eliminate that version sprawl I've been talking about. So to do this, you'll select a file in your OneDrive, select the ellipsis, and click Move To. Select the location you would like to move the file to. In this instance, I want to move this file to the Mark 8 project team. I'll select Documents, and here you will see the channel structure reflected in the folder structure. So select the folder for the channel you would like to move the file to, and select Move Here. Now when navigating to that channel, you will see the moved document from your OneDrive. Moving on, version history. So version history is a particularly helpful feature in Microsoft Teams. With so many team members working on shared files, you might need to do some digging to see what changes have been made and by who. So to start, in the Files tab of a Teams channel, the first place to look is the modified date and modified by columns. This is a quick glance that can help you understand when a file was last modified and by who. However, to access a more robust version history, you can open the file and in the file select Info, then Version History. This will open a panel on the right-hand side listing out the document's version history and by who it was modified by. To open a previous version, select Open Version. A new document will launch with a time and a date stamp, and you also have the option to save this version as a separate file. So again, this is a great way to see what changes have been made by who, since there often are a lot of people working on files in a Microsoft Teams channel. So where the heck do these Teams files live? This is a question we get a lot. So team channels files are stored in a SharePoint site. All files shared in team threads can be accessed by anyone in that team. All team owners and members can share permissions to any files or pages, even the entire site collection, to anyone in the organization. So to view your team files in SharePoint, go to the Files tab of a Teams channel and select Open in SharePoint. This will open the Teams SharePoint site. Here you can see that this has opened the Go-to-Market Plan folder that's connected to the channel in Teams. To view the entire Teams documents, you can select Documents here, and then you will see all the folders that correspond to that Teams channels. So here's actually another visual of how Microsoft Teams files are stored in SharePoint Online. You can see how the SharePoint Online folder structure reflects the Microsoft Teams structure. In SharePoint, you can sync the Teams files by selecting Sync to make your Teams files available in your Windows File Explorer. Or you can sync specific channels to your File Explorer right from Microsoft Teams. Now that your files are in Teams, how do you share these files with other people? Well, one option is sharing from the Teams application. So to share a file from the Teams app, select the ellipses next to the document you'd like to share and select Copy Link. This generates a link that works for any member of the team. So note, anytime you use this link in a chat or referencing it anywhere in an email or any space in Microsoft, just know that using this link will only work for members of that team. So for more sharing options, you can share the file from the Teams SharePoint site. So to do this, select the ellipses next to the document you'd like to share and select Open in SharePoint. This brings you to the Teams SharePoint site. Select the file you'd like to share and unselect Share. This opens your link sharing options. This should look really familiar from our example in OneDrive. Click the default link to view your link sharing options. So here you will see that the Anyone link option is grayed out, meaning that by default, recipients need to be a part of your organization to access this file. So what if you need to share a Teams file externally from your organization? Well, as long as your organization allows it, external access to documents in Teams works by using specific people links. That makes it so the link only works for the person whose email address you send the link to. So by default, these Anyone links are disabled so that if you do share a file with a guest, they have to sign in and there's an audit trail for who made that, what changes and when. So to grant external access to a Teams document, you'll select the specific people link option and apply. You will then specify the recipient in the text box by entering their email address. Microsoft will alert you if the recipient is outside your organization, and then you'll select Send. This will send the recipient an email, and in this email, it will note that you've shared a file with them. So to access the file, the recipient will select Open. This then brings them to a web page to verify their identity with a code. By clicking Send Code, the recipient will receive an email with a code, and they can just copy and paste that code to verify their identity and access that file. So recapping Microsoft Teams. Use team sites instead of shared drives for collaboration with a team of people. Document ownership moves to a larger group of people with edit permissions, and team members don't need a link to access a file. They have direct access to a shared file library. Move files to Teams when they become relevant to a project or a team. Teams files are more collaborative in nature, and Teams gives you a platform to work on a file with a team of people successfully. So before moving on to SharePoint, I just want to stop for a second and see if we've had any questions, Alex.
Yeah, we had one here from Teams that was, related to guest access in Teams, and it is possible to enable that in the tenants so that you can invite folks in from outside, and they're going to get basically the same rights that another member would have, to be able to modify files, upload files, contribute to conversation and so forth. But some of the things they may not be able to do because they can't become, say, like a team owner. They cannot invite new members into a team themselves. They can't, they may not be able to start meetings and stuff like that. But for the most part, they can fully contribute to the documents and things that you're working on in that team.
Thank you, Alex. Let's move on to SharePoint. SharePoint is an intranet site that helps organizations share and manage content, knowledge, and applications to quickly find information and share information and updates across the organization. So in SharePoint, governance and sharing permissions are likely controlled by your organization. So let's talk about when to use SharePoint. SharePoint is best used to publish documents for company-wide consumption, to post company-wide updates, official policies, centralized communications, and self-service information. So for example, benefits, PTO, other HR information is a great place for, or great information for SharePoint. So a recent example of how success used SharePoint is for COVID communication. So we quickly found that there was a lot of communication going around about COVID from different people, different departments, and we wanted a centralized location to keep that information and to link to files related to COVID. So we spun up a SharePoint site that was all, it was kind of our COVID information center. And so you could quickly visit this site to get anything you needed to know about COVID. All right, well, let's make sure you know how to get to SharePoint. So to access SharePoint, you'll go to portal.office.com and select SharePoint from the app launcher. This will launch a homepage listing out all the SharePoint sites you follow or recently accessed. So in this example, Work at Contoso is my company's main SharePoint homepage. Here you can see different pages for different departments across the organization. Each one of these sites has a document library to store relevant files. So in this example, the company has a page dedicated to company benefits. So let's talk about how you would upload a file to a SharePoint library. You'll select on the document library in the SharePoint site. Once you're here, you'll select Upload, then File. This will open your File Explorer to select a file from a location on your computer. Keep in mind again, this always uploads a copy to the document library. You can also drag and drop documents into a document library from a location on your File Explorer as well. And then again, you also have the option to move a file to a SharePoint library. So to eliminate version sprawl, you can actually move a file to a SharePoint library from a different SharePoint site. So in this example, I want to move a file from the Mark 8 project team site to another SharePoint site. So to do this, I'll select the file and select Move To. This will prompt you with a list of locations to physically move the file to. So select the SharePoint site you would like to move the file to, and then this will open the document library for that site. You'll select a location and select Move Here. Here you'll see that this physically moves a document from the team site to that SharePoint site. So once all of those SharePoint files are up, or SharePoint files are into your SharePoint sites, let's talk about sharing those files. So sharing files in SharePoint, again, is going to be very similar to that sharing experience in OneDrive and Teams. So to share a SharePoint file, select the file you'd like to share. Your two sharing options are going to be the share button at the top or copy link. But just for this example, I'll use the copy link option. So this option copies a link. And then again, to view your different link options, select that arrow. And here you can see your different link settings. Again, you'll notice that the Anyone link option is not available for this SharePoint library. So this is just a policy that my organization has implemented. And another fun option here is for Word files, you can select the open and review mode only to limit people to leaving comments and making suggestions in this file. This is a somewhat new option that I wanted to showcase here. And yeah, that's it for SharePoint. So before we move into the document lifecycle in Microsoft 365, I wanted to pause again and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, we did have one question in the Q&A that I think it'd be good to review audibly as well for the folks who are going to watch this after the fact for recording it. This is a common question that you get around bringing Excel files into the cloud. And there's been some cases where folks have linked from one file to another and referred to some sheet in some other file. And the question is, if you move that from a folder structure that you have on premises or in your old file server or something into the cloud, does that work? And the answer is no, not if it refers to a file path. Those file paths don't exist in the cloud. So it is totally, supported and acceptable to refer to other sheets within the same Excel workbook, but it may not work if you're trying to refer to like a file path, like your, I don't know, shared drive / subfolder / Excel workbook, 2 or something. It's not going to work. And it isn't really a best practice anyways. So generally speaking, that although that works, it's not, per se, it wasn't even recommended, in the on-premises world. And so, and it certainly doesn't work in the cloud. So usually it would be recommended to, if you need to refer formulas that refer back to other sheets, you keep those in just a larger Excel workbook where you have, the sheets that you need to refer to bound up within the same file.
Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. So let's talk about the document lifecycle in Microsoft 365. I think this is an important concept to review as we think about how files travel through the different applications. So building off what we talked about in the beginning of this presentation with those spheres of collaboration, let's talk about the document lifecycle. So this infographic illustrates that lifecycle of a document across OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. So when drafting a document, the best place to start is your OneDrive. This is useful when you need privacy while drafting documents. And when you need input early on in the drafting process, you can share that link to your OneDrive document using a OneDrive link or through that Teams chat option like we discussed. Once you've kind of got your thoughts down and that OneDrive document's coming together, it might grow in relevance and importance and need to be shared with a team of people. So by moving the document to Teams, a team of people can now collaborate on that document together and access that file from a shared document library. This is great because a lot of times when you bring a file into a team, everyone can contribute to that document with the information that they know and the knowledge that they have. So a document can really come together in Microsoft Teams. So at some point though, this document might become relevant or need to be published to the entire organization for consumption. So something that I think about is maybe a product that your company builds and sells, where different departments need to have information about this product. And so posting this information on SharePoint would be helpful, in which everyone in the company can read about this product and learn what they need to know about it. So at this stage, you can move, copy, or publish a Teams document to a SharePoint site for that company-wide consumption. So I'm actually going to exit out of this presentation and go through a quick demo. So just bear with me as I switch gears here. Once I'm here, I'm going to want to, let's say I've put this CR227 product overview document together and I want to share this with a colleague. So what I can do is select, of course, the ellipses and select share. I'm going to set this link to people in Contoso with the link because I don't want anyone forwarding this link to someone outside of my organization, and I'll select apply. Here I want to share this document with my colleague Isaiah, and I can enter a note. And select send. So by doing this, this will send an email to Isaiah in which he can access the document from a link in that email. All right, so I'm going to hop into this file. And here I can actually see Isaiah is already in this document and he has this document open. So as I'm scrolling throughout the file, I can see anywhere he is adding edits or additions. It will be a little cursor with his name next to it. I can view who's made changes or suggested changes with the track edits tool. I can see people who have made comments. So this is a great way to work in a document with a team of people and track what they're doing. And here I can see that Isaiah is typing in real time here. So that's the power of co-authoring in the cloud and using these links to work on documents with people. You can also review what files you have shared and what files have been shared with you in OneDrive. So to do this, you'll click Shared. And here you can see files that have been shared with you and files that have been shared by you. And at any time, you can actually revoke access to this file. So if I wanted to stop sharing this file at any time, I can just click on the ellipses, Manage Access, and I can select Stop Sharing, and this will remove the link, that link giving access to anyone who has it. So here I can see this link has been shared with Isaiah. So if I were to remove access, he would no longer be able to access that document. So now that Isaiah and I have made some edits to this document, let's say that we're ready to share this with our project team to get their input. This might even require some team members to update the document with information relevant to their role in the team. So to bring this file into Teams, I'll want to move the file to the appropriate Teams channel. So to do this, I'll select the file. I'll select Move To. I'm going to move this to the Mark 8 project team. I'm going to bring this into our go-to-market plan. Then I'm just going to select Move here. All right, and here I can see that this item has moved. And so if I do a refresh, it should no longer be in my OneDrive. Yep, here we can see it's gone. So by using this option, you can see this is a great way to eliminate that version sprawl. So let's pop into Teams and see if this, this document moved over. So here I'm in the go-to-market plan, and then I'll access my files, and here is the file that we just moved. I can see that it was added about a minute ago, and Isaiah has made some changes. So I can just open this file by clicking on the link here. I can view the file again right in Teams, or of course I can open in the desktop app here as well and review all the changes that have been made and saved. So once we get this to a place that is good for company-wide consumption, I'll want to share it with the rest of our organization. So to do this, I'm going to close out of the application or out of the document. And I am going to open this file in SharePoint. Again, it's important to note that this is my team's SharePoint site. So if I wanted to move this document to a different place in SharePoint for that company-wide consumption, I would do that by opening it in the team site or in the SharePoint backend of the team site, selecting the file, selecting Move To, and then here it will populate all of the SharePoint sites that I follow and participate in. So for this example, I want to move it to sales and marketing. I'll just put it in this general folder and move here. All right, so it looks like that has moved. And then to access that or to view that in the new SharePoint site, I'm going to just click and go to the SharePoint home. And here I'll click into sales and marketing. I'll click into documents, into that general folder. And here the file is ready for the entire company to consume and view. All right, so that is in essence the life cycle of a document across Microsoft 365. And that concludes the end of my presentation. Again, thank you everyone for your patience while we sorted that out.
Hey Vanessa, yeah, sure. I was gonna say I've been falling behind here, like madly typing, trying to keep up with some of the questions. So maybe we can take the time to go over some of these.
Sure. Rather
than having me like type them out and reply and publish them and so forth. So I do have a couple of questions. It's a little bit hard to understand exactly. It was probably while we were giving an overview of the SharePoint site and specifically with regard to this benefits, I've got a couple references to this. Someone asked, how do you create the channel or file to put in the benefits documents? And then I believe this is from the same person, or how do you create the little box called benefits to put the files in? I'm not sure exactly at what point during the slide deck this was, but there's if we're looking at this here in SharePoint, there's this benefits area. And to create a SharePoint site, did we go over that and what that looks like if you're just creating a new site?
No, we did not go over that in this presentation.
Yeah, okay. And it's similar to creating a team where, by default, users do have the ability to create SharePoint sites. And so they can choose to just create a it's just an empty container, and it's going to have, there's usually a couple of templates or something you can pick from. So there may be some placeholder images and stuff there for the home page. But then every site is going to have a documents library. And so if you create a site and you call the site benefits at Contoso, like this site is, then the documents library will automatically be there. And so you can just, click documents there on the left. And from there, you'd be able to upload files and so on. Similarly, in Teams, if you're, wanting to create a channel to be able to store files in the channel and have conversations around those files, you can simply select the team. If you have ellipsis, you will be able to use the ellipsis to click on Add Channel. That'll create a new channel, so you can have a benefits channel or something. Most likely, though, for benefits and so forth, you would probably be looking, less towards Teams, more towards SharePoint as a delivery mechanism. So hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for going over that.
Do you recommend using Word docs or PDF? How do you manage version control if the file needs to be PDF? Do you have a draft library before publishing with the original Word doc? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a right answer to that. I mean, you can certainly, if you publish something in PDF, obviously it's usually a pressed copy that's distributable. You can also have, Word documents that are published, but again, like let's say you have your documents published that can be published in a way that's read-only to people, so that when they get the link, they can't really change the file, but they can view it. You also have the ability to block download if you make it read-only. So if you change it to read-only, there will be an option to block the download for that file. So then they can't take a copy out for themselves. But if you want them to be able to do that, then PDF may be a better delivery mechanism.
Yeah, and to that point, in SharePoint's really in depth, and we're not going to be able to go over it, of course, in this session, because that could take, an entire week. But one thing to note with different sites in SharePoint, your SharePoint administrator can set permissions to these sites. So here we can see in this HR site, we have HR owners, visitors, and members. And they each have different permissions when it comes to interacting with files. So whoever's been named as an HR visitor or whoever has that tag, they're not going to be able to edit those files. And those HR members do have edit permissions. So just by understanding who has edit permissions and then using that version history, you should be able to see like restrict and then also see who is making changes to those documents.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and so I'll have a couple more questions. So like one is, does an org automatically have SharePoint behind the scenes if they have Teams? The answer is yes. So SharePoint powers the files experience and some of the other components that make Teams work. So Teams is a front end that pulls together a lot of different aspects of Microsoft 365, and SharePoint is certainly one of those. We do have one. This is kind of an interesting question. So if you have an Excel file in a team, can it be used to do a Word mail merge? Yes, I believe you would be able to, you'd still be able to, execute a mail merge. I think you can just select the file that you need to pull your data from through Word. I believe that's how it works, and you can navigate to that file through, whatever means is easiest. Like if it means browsing through, like if you're syncing that file down to your File Explorer, then it'll be available right on your computer, right? So if you open Word, and you can still execute that mail merge, that should be possible. Yep. A couple of users have had issues with changes that one person made not showing up on a collaborated document. I think it's a training issue, how they're using the file, where they're saving it, etc. But are there any known issues with collaboration and editing where changes may not have been saved or seen? Not to my knowledge, especially if they're doing it, if you're editing in the online experience on the web browser or in the Teams app, those are changes writing directly back into the original storage location. However, if they're using the desktop app, like if they're opening it in the app, then that's working on a copy that's local to their machine, and it's syncing those changes back. In the upper left corner, you'd see, from your Word applications, you would see an autosave feature, and if that's on, it should periodically just be automatically saving changes back to the cloud. But if you lose line of sight to that, or maybe someone saved a copy of it, or maybe they downloaded a copy, they thought they clicked on it in the SharePoint site, but maybe they downloaded a copy from the site and they're just working on their computer or something, certainly that wouldn't save back to the original location. So I think there probably are some user error issues that could potentially cause people to get confused about where the changes really live, and that's why it is a really good idea to work out of those, primarily out of those locations. And then I would validate, too, that you see that autosave feature. You can also, like, right over the middle of the application at the top, you can kind of see where the document's saved. I believe if you hover over that and click on it, it'll show that, this document's coming from, OneDrive or SharePoint or whatnot, right? So if you click on that, Vanessa, on the middle top.
I'm sorry, I missed that. This right here?
Yep.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and so you can kind of see the location it's saving those changes back to. As well, be aware that you can review versions of a document too. So you can kind of see, like, maybe someone saved their version, their changes, and someone else uploaded another version or something over it. and you know, maybe there you can find some of those changes in the version history. So that's possible as well. Oh yeah, what's the best way to share a file that's locked for editing by the whole agency, but select users can make edits to documents at most recent updates are available to all staff? I would definitely say a SharePoint site, right? So like, you know, in Teams, if you share a file in Teams, every single member of that team has the same permissions to it, basically. They can all edit the document, modify it, upload new files to the library, all that stuff. But with the SharePoint site, you're going to have the ability to customize those permissions and say, you know, this group of users are visitors, these groups of users are modifiers, right? And so, yeah, you could have that like a communication site, they call it, where an executive team might be publishing information into that site, kind of one-way communication out to the rest of the organization, and the other folks can go there to consume it. That's a really good question. Let's see, if you open a document in the desktop app, do you lose co-authoring features? No, yeah, you don't. So it does work, and you just have to make sure that you're, you know, opening it from, like I said, you shouldn't download a copy of the document and then open it, because then it's just working off your computer. But as long as you just open it from the cloud, and you can, you know, if you're in your OneDrive, you know, you can open it from the desktop app, yeah, just by pulling down the edit button. You know, if you'd rather use the desktop app than the web version, you can certainly do that, and it will be just saving the changes back to the cloud. And like I mentioned, you want to make sure that the autosave feature is enabled so that they're frequently being, you know, saved back. And you'll also see the other folks in this document, whether they're on the web or on the desktop. Now, we touched on one exception to this rule, and that's when you're using a sensitivity label to encrypt the document. And so in that case, as of today at least, you can co-author in the cloud, but if you're trying to open that same encrypted document in a desktop app, you may not get the same features and functionality. But they're working on getting the kinks out of that. But outside of like sensitivity labels and encrypting files and stuff, that should work. Yeah, cool. So do you have a chart noting when bringing a file into Teams, chat, or channel, or SharePoint brings in just a link versus copies the file versus moves the file? I can see that being confusing for general users. Do you have a chart noting when bringing a file into Teams or SharePoint?
We don't have a chart, but that's a great idea. This is one of those things that can become a gotcha. So I found many times people will, especially with synced libraries, they'll use that option to upload a file from their computer and think that they're sending a link to that file when really it's just uploading a copy. So that's a great idea, and something that we don't have, but I think that would be a great helpful piece of information for people to navigate the differences.
Misha, okay, Misha says if a document change is made by a user in Teams and deleted or changed something by error, can we access a previous version of the doc? Yes, you can. And you can do that from a couple places. Right in the web interface here, you should be able to browse versions. And if you're in the app itself, you should be able to find versions as well. If you're ever wondering, like, how do I find, you know, a feature or something, I actually like to use the search feature. Yeah, you just start searching for version history and it'll bring up under actions there, you'll see version history. And so sometimes I don't exactly know where to find, like in the ribbon, like if I'm in an office, I'm like, oh, which tab or whatever they put that under, I don't know. I'll just use search to find it because I find that to be a lot easier than remembering where various things live. So it doesn't look like there's a lot of versions of this file, but yeah, you can certainly do that. And it's kind of nice because you can click on a version and kind of see the differences before you decide to restore it and so on. So yeah. When you open a document in the app, what do you do when you're done editing? Just close it? Correct, yeah. So that's a good point. There's not really a, like, especially if you're working in the web or on the team, there's not like a save button or save as. If you're editing it, you know, in the web browser, you're basically editing it live, and they're trying to make that experience as similar as possible with that autosave feature in the upper left corner there. And you can click on save anytime you like, you know, to manually save a copy. But it should, with the autosave, it should be pretty similar in a lot of ways to the web.
Yep. So autosave can be a blessing and a curse. I love it because I am like, you know, whenever you just like all of a sudden you have a computer issue and you're like, crap, I haven't saved. Well, Word has your back here because it's been saving this whole time in the background. So that's when I love autosave. Where it can be a curse is when maybe some unintended changes have been made, like something hit your keyboard, like delete was actually made or hit, and it will save that, and maybe without your knowledge, and then you'll be missing something. But again, version history will have your back. You should be able to restore that file to a previous version, regardless if those oopsies happen with that autosave.
There was someone who wrote, or do you need to share it back? But I don't know which question that was connected to. That must have been a question we've already.
I think that was regarding how, when you save a change to a document, you do not need to share it back. So just by having that link, that's a live link. So that link will take you to the document into the most up-to-date version that's available. Think of it as like a living document. So this is, again, just something you can't get with file attachments. Whenever you send a file attachment, it's a date and time of that document. However, with a link, no matter when you access that link, and as long as you have access to the document, you'll be referencing the most up-to-date version.
Great. We did have someone earlier, and this might be a good to just demonstrate right now, is how do you get to the link drop down? I believe they were referring to editing like the link settings. So like once you click on share, let's show them that. Once you can like bring up a document and share it, there'll be at the top there, you'll see like how it says, I think right now it says anyone, right? Anyone with the link can edit. And if you just click that, you'll be able to change those permissions to however you like.
Yep, so here's that review mode only option that's somewhat new. Again, think about the context of this information. Is it hypersensitive? Is it maybe a piece of IP that, if it's an anyone with the link, if this link gets forwarded to someone, they will be able to access it. So if you want to keep it within the organization, just to be safe, this is a great option to have. Again, if you want to be super safe, use specific people. If you're handling information like salary information, even if you send an email with a link to very sensitive information, if that person isn't specified, they can't access it. That can't happen with a file attachment. If you attach a file that's the wrong file, like you can't say, I only want these people to access this file. It's your toast. So there's really great use cases for links.
So thank you. That's super helpful. Let's see, another one popped in here. Can you share a draft document with a group of people and edit in real time together in a live meeting? Can you share a draft document with a group of people? Yes. Yeah, you certainly can. Yep.
This would be maybe a great example of, let's say you have a group chat. So here, I have a group chat with Alex, Isaiah, and Nestor. I've shared this international marketing strategy document with them. If we were to hop on a call, we could all be on this call and editing this document together. We could be talking about it. We'd all have access to this file. Again, it's accessible in this files tab, so everyone in this chat has access to this file through a link. All those changes then will be saved back to that sender's. Whoever sent that file, all those changes will link back to that sender's OneDrive location. So that sender is essentially the owner of the document, and then the others are contributors to that document.
And if you were doing the same thing in a Teams channel, all the changes would be saved back to the file that lives in that channel.
Yep. Yeah. So again, if there's already an established team that you want to work on, or that you want to work on a document with, use that team. Don't recreate the team or spin up a chat with all these team members. Use this collaborative space that you're given. This way too, if someone's out of the office, they can reference everything that's been happening here in this activity feed, and they can reference the file and see what changes have been made.
This is a question that was from the beginning of the event, but it's a good question. It was just a question about like, hey, are we muted, or should we mute ourselves, or how does that work? And so that's actually one of the good, just to bring up the difference between live events and meetings. This is what we're presenting here is using live event feature from Teams, which is a little different than meetings, where people are invited and by default you can kind of mute or unmute yourself or whatever. But a live event is really made as a presentation platform where you're kind of pushing content one way to an audience. So a little different feature set than what you get in the normal meetings. So that was a good question. All
right, well, it looks like that's it with questions. If you have any that are lingering, feel free to hit us up, and when we send that post-event email out, you can reply, and we'll make sure to address your questions if they weren't answered here. Again, thank you for your patience as we sorted out that link issue. They're bound to happen. So Oh, we do have one more question.
If multiple people change the same thing, is there a hierarchy to whose changes applies? Well, co-authoring is you'd be able to see in real time like where the other people are typing. So you'd be like typing on top of each other. I think that would be a difficult thing. There are sometimes like sync conflicts that can be resolved. Like it'll pop up in your, like I think you'll see this sometimes in your when you're opening it up. This usually more pertains to the desktop app, not so much online, because again you're basically real time and you can see right where people are typing. But in the desktop app, if you happen to upload a change or to have your own copy of a file and it's trying to merge changes or something, and you were offline making changes and then you synced back up, and in the meantime other people were co-authoring, it may say like, do you want to save 2 copies of this, or do you want to review which ones you want to keep? And so it'll ask you to resolve the conflict if it doesn't know how. But for the most part, it uses its intelligence to kind of figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's correct, Alex. In my experience, is that a little window will pop up and notify you that some changes have been made, but it weren't able to sync them, and that message usually comes up over here, and it will let you know. And so usually, what I like to suggest is, if you know who's working on that document, their name will pop up here. Reach out to them in a chat message and be like, hey, I'm in this document too, like, do you want to hop on a call and we can talk about what we're doing, or just kind of touch base with each other to make sure that you're not overwriting each other's changes. But to Alex's point, there's some really great intelligence built in here, so those instances are few and far between.
Yeah, this isn't giving me enough context to respond, but it says past issues with Excel cells on a shared spreadsheet had a conflict where the doc became corrupted and worthless. Yeah, I guess I'd have to look into, or if this was in referring to, something in a SharePoint or OneDrive. If there's some issue with the document, I would normally just go back to the previous working copy and work forward from there. Just missed that. Should we give it just a couple more minutes for questions to come in, or I think we want to?
I think we're kind of wrapping it up here. I see people are starting to check out. But again, let us know if you have any questions when we send this post-event email out. And if any of your colleagues missed this, you can give them this link or this event recording as well. So thanks again for your guys' time, and we hope to see you, even though we're not physically seeing you, again soon. Thanks, everyone.